You want the good news, you want the bad news?
I don't like either one of those options.
Your words are super wise, man.
Is this the Dr. Ray?
You know, we're not doing therapy here.
But you're a psychologist.
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
I gotta say, you're really helping me by taking my call today.
I just never thought I would call your show.
All right, first of all, my advice to you is going to be to shut your mouth.
I like that. I can do that. That's doable.
Now, why did I go off on that tangent? I don't know.
Is this the Dr. Ray?
Well, are you better than God?
No way!
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
You'd think, with my years of doing this psychology stuff, that I'd have this communication stuff down pat. Well, I have to read books, too. I was reading Communication for Dummies the other day because I want to get better at this. And I got to confess, it's a little hard for me. My wife said to me the other night, apparently she had been talking to me, and she said, Raymond, are you even listening to me? And I thought to myself, that's a funny way to start a conversation. Better get to chapter 3 in Listening for Dummies. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctors, and I promise I will listen to you. I will not say that's a funny way to start a conversation. I would welcome your calls for any number of reasons that you choose, whether it's a situation that is perplexing you or frustrating you, making you angry, testing your mettle to live a Christian life, somebody else in your circumstances, in your nearby world. That's the most common reason, usually a situation of some type. We have questions about generic psychology, generic intelligence, generic diagnosis, generic faith intersecting with psychology questions. We have those. A lot of people call in to be very helpful, and I was reading in the March issue of Purgatory Today that if you call in to help someone, depending upon how much you help them, and you can't know this because they're gone, but you do get some days taken off your purgatory. I'm not really sure the exact amount, and I don't know exactly how that works because we don't really know if purgatory is a flash insight or there's time. We don't know. But the purification process is important however it happens. The number, 877-573-7825, 877-57 if you would wish to be part of the program, and I would very much wish to talk to you. Couple items of business. Now, I was supposed to announce this yesterday, but I didn't, and I noticed that this was to be announced by me yesterday. I can still get away with it because it refers to a week. It says, congratulations to our EWTN radio partner, KSMZ 101.9 FM, serving Missoula, Montana. I think I was in Missoula some time back, celebrating 9 years this week on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. I want to congratulate Randy Ballas and the team there at St. Michael Communications, Missoula, Montana. By the way, Montana has a special meaning for my wife and I. Our last child left the house to live in my duplex. I'll get to that in a moment. But we decided now that she's gone and all the kids are raised, we are going to get into a parent protection program. Our identities will be altered. I don't think we'll do any kind of plastic surgery, but they will put us in Montana, somewhere way out there. It'll probably take the kids a good week or two to find us. All right. What other announcement? The speaking season has started for me. I had quite a bit of a layoff there through January, but Monday, February 2. So, Andrew, if by chance we have a decent show and you want to run it as a least worst of, we can still run it because I'm acknowledging, as I say, February 2, that this could be a future show that February has already passed. I will be, God willing, at Solon, St. Rita's 6 o'clock, Monday night, February 2, there. Those of you listening on The Rock, AM 1260, that is well within your broadcast area. We even pick you up down here in Canton. So if you'd like to join me, 6 o'clock, St. Rita's in Solon, Ohio. I own a duplex. When I was 26, 27 years old, I had started working at the mental health center in Lisbon, Ohio. I was a single guy, drove a 72 Cutlass, and I had more money than I knew what to do with. At that time, my starting salary was, are you ready for this, PhD clinical psychologist, every bit of $16,000 a year. Translates out to $8 an hour. That's a lot of empathy for $8 an hour. I asked my mom and dad, what do I have to do here? I don't necessarily want to just put money in the bank endlessly. My dad says, well, Ray, invest in property. You're not making any more of it. Okay. So I found a duplex. I purchased this duplex, and I thought, well, maybe someday, who knows, if I'm married and have kids, my kids can live here. And as it so happened, that is the way it is. I have a daughter on one side, a son on the other side, and I'm just really hoping, I don't have to evict them. You just feel terrible evicting your own kid. I just don't want to do that, especially my daughter who's married with a baby, coming up. I was raking the leaves. I do all the lawn work there, and I was raking the leaves a year or so ago in the back. A fella behind me who lived in the home comes up. Did you see a girl run through here? I said, no. How old? 15? No, I've been raking for a couple hours and haven't seen anything. He said, okay, thanks. She ran away. And then he ran back up to his house. So I continued to rake the leaves. After I was done, I went up to his house and I knocked on the door. He came to the door. And I said, did you find your daughter? He said, yeah, she came back. And then I said, did you take her cell phone? And he looked at me like, who told you? How did you know? And I said, well, if you want an intense reaction from a kid, for most kids way beyond any kind of otherwise discipline, and you want to find out how attached, I don't want to use the word addicted, but you could stretch to use that word, especially the physiological changes that we now know take place with this relentless use of smartphones and all that they offer. You watch their reaction when you take it or really say, no, I think I gave it to you way too early in life, and we're going to reassess this somewhere down the road. Look out. Look out. I want to say this kind of delicately. I saved the article, but I don't really want to go into the details of it. Suffice it to say this. I believe it was in Michigan. This young boy, 11 years old, killed his father in his sleep because Dad took his device. It wasn't a smartphone. It was some kind of either game device or an iPad. Obviously, my guess would be there was an awful lot of turmoil building up to all of this. That'd be my guess. I wouldn't think you would have this normally well-adjusted pre-adolescent go to that extreme because he loses his device. But I looked at it, and I must confess my level of shock was not what it otherwise would have been, because I've seen some pretty intense reactions from kids. Parents have reported these things to me. They were stunned at their child's reaction in terms of violence, destroying things. In this little girl's case, running away, however temporarily. The designers of the social media platforms are brilliant. And I use that word not brilliant like positively brilliant. Brilliant in bringing about what they want to bring about, which is to grab these kids by the throat and co-opt their senses, co-opt their attention. More than once I have read where designers of the algorithms, the programs that keep kids coming back and harder, will not let their children have a device because they know what they're designing. They know its power. I read one guy who quit. He basically quit. He said, I can't do this. I can't work to design this stuff, to hook these kids and to do this to them. And the research is coming in. It's overwhelming. I mean, the longer time spent on social media sites and in the internet, the more likely there's going to be depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation and resentments and senses of I'm not socially good enough. You can't even argue with that research anymore. It's overwhelming. Which raises the question for me, why do parents still yield? Maybe that's something I'll take up shortly here. 877-573-7825. 877-57-EQUAL. That's the number to call to get onto the program. I'd very much like to hear from you. Question, comment, okay, criticism of me. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Ray.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com. Food for the Journey's Sister Ann Shields.
We have a tendency to make idols. We exalt other people to the place that really belongs to God. And we see it. We see it in sports. We see it in beauty contests of all kinds. We see all kinds of ways in which we idolize certain people. We elevate them because there's something in us that wants to be able to look up to someone. But that person is Jesus. And you idolize if you're thinking about them, if you're imitating them, if you're occupying yourself with the things that they do. Oh, we'd say, oh, no, I don't worship false idols. But in effect, we do. If our time, our attention, and our money are going to things or people that aren't worth it. We are to have the Lord front and center and the Lord exalted in our lives, everything directed to Him and back through Him to His people. But we human creatures, we go after something that touches us in some way or we desire to be like them, and so we start imitating them, and we get ourselves sidetracked. Let's fix our gaze on the Lord. Let's imitate Him, and then we're going to know the kind of worship that sets us free.
Sister Ann Shields gives you Food for the Journey, weekday mornings at 6:45 and again at 11:30 on 990 Ave Maria Radio.
Asking the question, if Dr. Ray speaks on the radio and there's no one in your family to hear it, will your child still be better behaved? Will your husband pick up his socks and squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom? And will your mother-in-law come up to you on Christmas Eve and confess? I've been so wrong about you all these years. You're a better wife and mother than I could have ever dreamed of being. Michael calling from Spokane, and I talked to the folks in Spokane. I was out there, and they told me that there was a journalist who, the name is actually pronounced, if you pronounce it right, it's Spokane. But for whatever the reason, this journalist somehow got people calling it Spokane. I don't know how he did that. Hi, Michael.
Hey, how's your parent protective program going, Rick?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening here. My wife requested that they actually alter my face. I thought that hurts. That really hurts. You know, I said, honey, if I just simply go well into the woods, they're not going to find me. She goes, no, they might still. Let's do something about your face, Raymond. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Happy New Year. I want to pray for people without heat in these horrific storms, winter storms. And, of course, coming from Spokane, Washington, I got to go with Seattle Seahawks coming up Super Bowl.
Well, the Cleveland Browns won. Hey, come on now. Our Cleveland Browns won an NFL championship in 1964.
History. I love the Cleveland Browns. I love the Cleveland Browns.
64.
Yeah. I love the. Well, I was born in Michigan, so I got to go with Detroit occasionally too. Detroit Lions, but.
Well, I'm glad you asked a very simple question here, Michael. A very simple question. Sure. Sure. Go ahead. You ask it, and I will. Oh, of course, I'll answer it in close, maybe a couple sentences. It should give you a good answer.
Yeah, this
Go
is
ahead.
a pro-life question. I heard on the TV with Daily Mass last week, there are 65 million abortions today now in America, 65 million unborn lives lost. Right now, states can have the option of deciding on abortion. Louisiana has no Planned Parenthood buildings, but the big issue now is, of course, the mail-order abortion pill, which can be probably devastating to women taking it. How do we prevent? How do we relate? How can we talk to these people on abortion, and how do we get to them?
Well, if you're talking one-on-one, obviously it depends upon the person, depends upon the relation you have with them. It depends upon their openness. It depends upon if they're waffling about this. It depends upon if they are abortion believers up to the day of the child being born, or they would say, no, first trimester. On one hand, the good news is, yes, there are certain states that have put limits on abortion. Sometimes no abortion is legal. And I talked to Frank Pavone, and he told me that the research says whenever there are legal hurdles, abortions go down. As long as the venue is not smooth, it does slow people down. It makes them think. It makes them less willing to just jump to abortion. So that's one piece of good news. The bad news, what you brought up, the number of actual abortions is going down, but the number of abortions via the pill, the RE482, is going up. It now accounts for more than half of all abortions. So, in fact, it's been privatized. And once you privatize anything like pornography, once you can do it anonymously, the numbers doing it are going to go up. So in that sense, one of the things I do if the topic comes up with abortion is I will ask them, I will explore how they think about this. I will ask, do you believe that's a human being? Well, I don't know when it becomes a human being. Well, then would you be able to estimate when it becomes a human being? In other words, I try to get them to think about this issue. As long as you keep it kind of fuzzy, well, I think women should have a right to choose because this is reproductive health care is what it is. You do that, and you never get a lot of folks to actually think about what it is. I remember one time I showed a picture of a late-term abortion baby who was just ripped apart, torn apart, to someone I know that is borderline on this. Her view was, yeah, I'm Catholic, but, I just think that at times you haven't really considered this. And she wouldn't look at it. She refused to look at it. And I asked her, don't you want to know what this looks like in the third trimester? No, I don't want to see that. Why are you doing that? And I said, I had a good enough relationship with her that she wasn't going to run me out of her life. But it depends, Michael, on so many things. And do I think that abortion will ever be non-existent in the U.S. or in the Western world? No, I don't. I think there will always be, even if we tomorrow outlawed every single abortion, there would still be abortions, but much smaller number for sure. So the argument of, well, you can make it illegal, but people are still going to do it. Yeah, they'll still do it. You can make murder illegal too. People are still going to murder. But the number is going to be far less. But I don't think that'll ever happen. I think we're too far down the road in terms of abandoning religion, in terms of autonomy. I have the right to do what I want to do. In terms of devaluing kids. I mean, if you look at surveys, the younger people, they don't really see kids as something that they aspire to. Less and less and less and less. So there's so many cultural factors. I think what will happen is there will be that group of people, and hopefully there will be a fair amount of them, who will say, no, I cannot do this. I will not do this. I will do what I can to convince hearts. I will do what I can to change laws. But at this point, everybody got all excited when Dobbs said, okay, back to the states. They didn't see it coming. They didn't see so much abortion politics, so much abortion money being spent in states, one at a time, to get it on the ballot, to get it as something within the Constitution, and they succeeded. Multiple states, they succeeded. So in some respects, in some of the states, they overturned even before Roe, even after Roe, what were some limits. Now there's no limits in some of those states. None. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Okay, I didn't. So it's a real mixed bag of victories and losses, Michael. But thank you for letting me just ramble on about this in so many ways. We are called to be faithful. Mother Teresa says we're not necessarily called to be successful, but if you are faithful, you're going to be a little more successful. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it so much. You take good care, my friend. Yeah, a topic like that is so very broad, and there's so many factors to it. But I will tell you this, religious or not, as a psychologist, I have seen how easily people can be made to think a certain way. I have no doubt that 100 years ago in our country, the vast majority of people would have said, no, that's a baby. That's a human life in that womb. You can't do it. But the relentless cognitive pounding away at the way people think, and especially with mass media, has done it. It's shifted a lot of hearts, and sadly, a lot of, if you want to call it well-intentioned, I guess, but terribly misguided. I will tell you this. If you get into a discussion with someone and you ask them their thinking, their reasoning about abortion, a couple of things will happen. Generally, it's not well thought out. They rely on cliches. It's important to be able to choose what she wants to do with her own body. Well, I think everybody should have a right to reproductive health care. So they'll spout that. But when you try to get more details about what exactly is happening to whom in an abortion, you're going to get a couple of reactions. One, they're going to get mad. They're going to get mad. They're not going to like it. They're not going to be able to offer a reasonable explanation. And what can happen is that you're not going to hear, well, you've given me a lot to think about. I hadn't really thought it through with that kind of reasoning. Thank you. That didn't happen. Remember one time I engaged a guy in this discussion we were working out, and I was just asking him these things. And at the end he went, "Because it's legal, that's why." And that was it. That was his answer, because that clearly conveyed to me he just really hadn't thought it through. His attitude was, society says it's okay. The law says it's okay. Therefore, it's okay. Pretty much. If you know anything about human history, for example, Nazi Germany, and I want to bring up that particular situation that everybody brings up, but what you had is you had a populace. Initially, it was the Nazis who wanted to exterminate the Jews, but you had a populace, much of whom went along with it, because, in fact, they had gotten swayed. They had been shaped in their thinking, and that is so common. Okay, I got you, Eric. You're screening those calls. All right, before I get there, I want to make one more comment. I said it perplexes me when parents are aware of what the smartphone and devices unsupervised can do to their kids. It's getting hard to ignore it. And much of the time, they don't need the research. They see it in their kids. So given that, why do so many parents yield? Now, I think the reasons are psychological, emotional, and fear. If they had their druthers, their kid wouldn't have one at age 12 or 14 or even 16. It wouldn't have one. But they're scared. Child's reaction. They're scared of, quote-unquote, long-term psychological social damage. They're scared of resentments. They're scared of sneakiness, deception. They're scared. Even though they know, as one mother said to me, well, if it were up to me. And I asked her, I said, who's it up to? Let's go to John. John from Texas. Another very broad umbrella question. Hi, John.
Hi there. How are you?
Okay, sir. What's up?
Great. I was just calling in regarding the topic of abortion. And one thing that's puzzled me is why the Vatican, with their vast resources, network, why they don't actually be a little more proactive. You know, just some simple things they could do, like maybe set up sonogram boutiques next door to Planned Parenthood locations and encourage people to come in and spend time with the baby. Because it seems to me, I read a study once that women who spend 30 minutes looking at the baby on a sonogram are a lot less inclined to actually go through with the abortion.
That's true.
Because obviously they're referred to as fetuses, and once they see the baby move and actually showing body parts and such, So just things like that, and why the Vatican doesn't create like a world-class adoption system, a world-class orphanage system. It just seems like they've got the money, but yet, we're kind of spinning in a circle with abortion. The Catholic Church has been for years and years and years and years, and they really haven't been very proactive, in my opinion. So I'm just curious what your peace of mind is.
Well, John, I've looked into this at great depth, and there is not any organization, if you want to call it that, no organization in the last 2,000 years who has done more to take care of orphans, hospitalizations, education, the poor. Catholic Church runs about 25% of the hospitals. The amount of charitable organizations are explosive that the Catholic Church runs. Now, it's not out of the Vatican necessarily, but at local levels, diocesan levels, lay organizations, it's enormous. There is no one even close that does for those in need and for moral issues that the Catholic Church does. Now, that said, you said an interesting thing. You said, well, the Vatican has the money. No, they don't. No, they don't. They have to decide where best to spend their limited resources. The idea that why don't they set up sonograms in the various neighborhoods next to, that's being done somewhat at a local level, at local levels. But in terms of saying, well, they have unlimited resources and they can do all this stuff if they wanted, and why aren't they doing more? It's not that straightforward a question. I know I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses. I don't think I am. I think I'm dealing with reality here. That the Vatican, its voice is the strongest pro-life voice in the world, by far. Catholic Church has not budged. Unfortunately, many other Christian denominations have budged. They have collapsed on the issue of abortion. But the Church has not. She has stood her ground at not only the Vatican level, but all of the dioceses, the bishop level, the clerics, everything. She is the most pro-life institution in the world, by far. Now, if you're saying, why don't they do more of this, this, and this? I think that just comes down to where you decide you can put your resources to best use. And the resources are not unlimited, that's for sure. I had a friend once say to me, well, the Vatican has all kinds of art, and they could sell that art and they could feed the world. And I said, well, first of all, no, they'd feed the world for about one day. But I said, second of all, they don't own that art. That's not their art. The next pope isn't going to say, oh, good, I inherited the art. No, that's the Church's treasure. It's for the people. So I know what you're saying, and I know that you're probably speaking out of frustration because it just seems like abortion is this juggernaut that just keeps going. It keeps going. Can we do more? I think we can, but it's really going to come down to changing hearts and minds. Thank you, John. Dr. Ray, 877-573-7825. You want to weigh in, go ahead. Or you just want to ask me a question about, like psychological and stuff. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Still have time to take a couple more calls if you want to call in. 877-57-EQUAL is the number to call. Kind of quiet on the lines. Maybe people are hunkering down, not traveling as much in some of the places. And so most listening is done via car radios and apps, and Sirius Satellite Channel 130 are gradually encroaching upon terrestrial radio. In other words, it's a bunch of ways to listen, and that's kind of nice. I remember the Sister Ligori used to scare me when I was 7 years old, and she'd say, the world won't end until everybody's had a chance to hear the gospel. And I thought, okay, well, I got a lot of time yet because, there's probably all kinds of people all over the place not going to hear the gospel. I had no idea that we could have the internet, We could have applications. We could have all this stuff that pretty much allows almost everybody to hear it if they have some kind of access to any kind of device. So that made me nervous a little bit. Let's go to Joseph. Joseph is calling. He's still talking to Joseph? Well, that's okay. I can talk to Joseph, too. Let's make this a conference call, Eric. We can do that, make a conference call. Putting those little asterisks up there. All right, I'll just wait for Joseph here very, very briefly. There it is. There's the Okay, what are you going to? Got that. All right. Got it. I got it. I'll take it. No problem. Joseph, Texas. Thanks for calling. How are you?
Well, thanks. How are you, Dr.
I'm good, sir.
I need some help. I'm a Catholic, and one evening a few days ago, two friends of mine asked me, by the way, what faith are you? And I told them that I believe in the church that was started by God. And they're like, what? Can you give us the Bible references that your church is the church that was started by God? By the way, they are from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which I know it's been around for only 163 years. I don't know how it was started. I wanted to get that history so I can base my basis on that. But I told them, give me a few days and I'll come back with...
So did you come back with an answer for him, Joseph? Joseph, did you come back with an answer for him?
No, not yet.
Okay, but let me give you one. If they're saying to you, where in the Bible does it say that the Catholic Church is the church started by Jesus Christ? First of all, they're putting you to answer a question that is an illogical question. Say to them, my belief that Jesus Christ established the Catholic Church is based in history. If you know anything about history, anything about what the early church believed, if you know anything about how the apostles practiced and spoke and preached, then you will know that the church that most resembles the very first century of Christianity is the Catholic Church. What they believed, and we know this through writings of many, many early Christians, we know this, that what they believed is pretty much what the Catholic Church preaches and teaches. Challenge them to look at history and say, tell me how you've decided that the Catholic Church is not the church that Jesus established. History will give you plenty of evidence, my friend. Thank you for the call. Okay, let's see what else. All right, let's go to Lynn. Lynn from Omaha, Nebraska, Spirit Catholic Radio. Got a whole bunch of folks calling in now. All right, Lynn, what's up?
Oh, hi, Dr. Ray. I think I have a scientific fact for you, and this is a given. Truth can be defined in two words. First cell. I mean, look at how great you are, how successful you are. Without your first cell, do you think you would exist? So that's what truth is. It's the first cell of a human being. It's a scientific fact.
They asked, I forget how many thousand PhD biologists around the world, when does life begin? Now, we have had politicians say, you don't really know when life begins. They asked these, I think it was like 5,000 of them. When does life begin? 96% of them, PhD biologists, said at conception. Exactly what you're saying, Lynn. That one-celled living zygote has everything in it. The DNA that is the code for the complete development of a human being.
That proves contraception is wrong.
Well, yeah, because contraception can be an abortifacient if it's chemical, yes. But the problem here is, and this is a frustration, again, the old follow the science. Well, people aren't going to follow the science when it becomes inconvenient or when it bangs up against something that they really don't want to do. Thank you, Lynn.
Down, they know it's the truth.
Well, some do and don't want to adhere to it, and others are pretty much ignorant about the whole issue. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. Let's go to Joe from Michigan, Ave Maria Radio. And Joe, I am also a knight. So tell me a little bit about the KSC doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, one of their pillars, they have 4 pillars that they focus on: faith, family, community, and life. And if you get involved with any of your local councils, they always have a commitment to protecting the sanctity of life. So I heard that one caller call in, and I can tell you, just as being an active member, we need more guys to come and help us with that fight, with that protecting life. So I told your person that I talked to when I called, you can just pass this message on, but we need guys. We need younger guys. We need guys that want to get involved, because it's not just about the church. It's about guys. It's about guys teaching their kids, especially their sons, about this, because I think a lot of times that whole question of abortion falls on the woman when it really starts with the man's thinking as well and what they're choosing to do. So,
Joe, you point out one of the many, many, many ways that the Catholic Church, through lay organizations like the KSC, which has 2 million plus members worldwide, still pretty big, but you're right, it is getting older. That's true.
Yep.
The lay organizations are doing massive amounts of work. Massive. And it's interesting, there is research that indicate that lay organizations like KFC or those Christian-based interventions are much more effective than government-sponsored interventions that don't pay any attention whatsoever to the spiritual component.
Absolutely.
That's what the research says.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Thank you for the heads up. This is Dr. Ray. Take your calls here after the break.
We are in the high point of the liturgical year. We are in ordinary time. Why did God become part of history? For the sake of ordinary time. Why did he suffer death? For ordinary time. And resurrection? Again, for ordinary time. We live our lives chasing the glamour moments, the highlight moments. Yet, as a Eucharistic people, we should know that God is most fully present in the ordinary, not in the flash of life, not in its speed, not in its awards and banquets. We kill our unborn children, and we tuck away our elderly because they slow us down, hindering our pursuit of those glamour moments. But it's because they do slow us down that we should love them all the more, for helping us find the wealth in the ordinary. GuadalupeWorkers.org.
Have you ever received an email, text, or commentary from someone that came from such a place of anger and hate that you were totally taken back? I was once attacked on Facebook by someone I've known for years about a conversation over abortion and Planned Parenthood. I never attacked her or threw out any nasty name-calling. I just shared data and facts and offered to share more offline. She basically told me that I could take my data and shove it. I knew she was coming from a place of pain. I don't know her past experiences, but I understood that what was coming out of her mouth was something that lived in her heart. When we're placed in these situations, we may want to respond by defending ourselves or attacking back. But as Christians, we need to stop and think. Focus the conversation on Christ and continue to come from a place of love and charity. Invite the Holy Spirit into your heart to guide you, because what lives in your heart will come out of your mouth. This has been a Christ-Centered Communication message. I'm Vanessa Denha-Garmo, a communications evangelist and host of Epiphany.
Okay, I'll try to get to the rest of your calls. Janet from Ohio. wants to make a comment. This is something, as an adoptive father, I've seen radical changes over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Hi, Janet.
Hi. Hi, Dr. Ray. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm with you. The thing about...
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, this phone stinks. Okay, I'm here.
Well, as long as I don't. You know, say you could have said...
never do, sir.
Okay.
You never do. I'm just glad we have a voice of reason like you. Anyway, like I was trying to say, is the media has done such a great job of terrifying people, first of all, to put children into adoptive care, because they always tell you the worst-case scenarios, and that's, not to downplay some of the horrible things that have happened. I knew somebody who was in a less than stellar situation, but on the other hand, also, to terrify people about adopting, especially older children.
I asked a teacher, I spoke to a group of high school kids in what is called Ohio's GRAD program. That program is young girls who are pregnant and are instructed on how to begin motherhood and develop some very nice practices. I asked the teacher, do any of the girls ever consider placing a child for adoption? And she looked at me like I had just said, does your school have indoor plumbing? She said, absolutely not. Abortion is much higher on their priority list than adoption, which is way at the bottom. Way at the bottom. And you're absolutely right. The mindset among the young people is, I could never do that. I could never do that to my baby. I don't know where my baby would be. I don't know what would happen. I would have to live with it. And then part of it is they don't want to go through pregnancy. That's another factor, so they abort. You're absolutely correct. What the adoption world has changed radically. Many of the kids now available are not voluntarily placed. They are either taken by Children's Services, they are institutionalized from overseas, they are older kids in foster care. So yes, you're absolutely correct. Adoption is not seen as a responsible, beautiful, loving thing by much of our culture, especially the young girls. Absolutely, no question. They've done a remarkable job at making adoption your very last option, if you would even consider it.
Well, it doesn't help. It doesn't help, but my friend, I've called you about her before. And, we were talking, and the thing is, she's one of these people, okay, who watches shows like Law and Order and everything. And, she's referring to, like, this episode where, an adopted kid was so abused and everything that he ended up trying to burn a house down. Well, okay, there are maybe some situations like that, but I tried to tell her that's maybe one for every, 200, 300 kids in state care?
Well,
it's
more
fair.
complex than that, and I can explain that. But you're right. The media, they absolutely, whether they intentionally do it or not, they elevate abortion well above adoption. So very true.
Oh, they do.
Janet, thank you. I got to run to Josie real quick because she has a question here. Josie, what's up? Real quick, I got about a minute and a half.
Wondering, it's totally off topic, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When you're dreaming, I've noticed a couple times that in my dream, if I'm asked to calculate like a problem, that I will immediately wake up. And I was wondering if, in your experience of, studying the brain and people, if that makes sense to you. I've noticed that if I'm asked to actually do something in the dream and I go to do it, then that's when and it's kind of this slow waking, but I definitely feel like I'm going from dream state to awake. Does that make any sense?
Well, it makes sense from your perspective and your individual brain. I'm not familiar with any kind of general rule that says if, in fact, you're in a dream state asked to perform some operation and it's going to wake you up. Because there's something that happens that stimulates the brain and you jump out of the deep state that you're in into a wake state. I'm not familiar with anything like that. But in your case, it'd be interesting. What you ought to do, keep a little journal, Josie. When you wake up, If you remember, if you're going to wake up right during a dream, chances are you're going to remember at least a little bit before it fades away. Write it down. Say, okay, what in the dream was I supposed to solve? And see if there's any kind of consistency to the type of problems, any kind of consistency to waking up. But here's the other thing, though. You only know it happens when it happens. In other words, if you've got to solve something in your dream and you don't wake up, then chances are you're not going to remember it. So you could still be having that. These are just those times when you do wake up.
One thing I've noticed.
I'll tell you what. I want you call me back because in about 15 seconds they're gonna take me out of here with the music. 20 seconds. Here it comes. Josie, call me back. I want to hear more about this. This is Dr. Ray, always fascinated by this sleep stuff, which raises the question: is why do we have to sleep anyway? Right? Why couldn't God just design it so we can stay awake? St. Rita's, Monday, February 2nd. Join me, Dr. Ray.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.